everybody. Welcome back to Lunchboxx Reviews, October Horror Month Spectacular 2013, Part 2. Today we'll be reviewing Friday the 13th, Part 2. Better than the first one? Yeah. Better than the 7th one? No. It's still one of my up there Friday the 13th movies and horror movies in general. It's my third favorite look for Jason. Baghead, but when he takes the mask off, that's my most acceptable of Jason's mug. His big red mane and beard. Overall, great movie. Really good movie. It has its problems, obviously. They do explain. I was making a joke about the internet complaining about, like, Jason all of a sudden being an adult. And they do actually explain that in this movie. The legend was that he didn't really die. He had just been living in the woods like a crazy person. And he witnessed his mom get killed. He wasn't a child when it happened due to the timeline. Yeah, he saw it. It's got a good setup to its story overall. It just doesn't... It takes a little while. It gets you real tense before it kills off the only survivor from the last one, poor Alice. Poor dopey-eyed Alice, who cut off his mom's head. Also, Jason Voorhees is the killer in this one. Happy about that. Long setup, but very good setup. It starts off with a bang. Last one started off with a, oh god, what just happened? This one started off with a, she had it coming. And boom, ice pick to the temple. And Jason's just like, yep. I'm not going to waste time like my mom did. And that poor cat. The cat just looking at him like, dude, not cool. Stop stabbing people. And then it gets into setting up the characters and everything for this movie. And one of our favorites returns. Crazy Ralph.
It's got a death curse.
I was happy to see him back in this movie. Although, it doesn't end well for Ralph. I didn't expect him to make it through the first movie. So... we got a little bit more Ralph than I thought we were going to get, and I'm happy with it. Also, these movies, you can tell they're from the 80s. Like, there's plenty of 80s to go around in these movies. Just hairdos and clothes. You know, not always the way people act in them, but it's just like 80s, the horror movie. There's this one character named Scott. Kind of looks like a prettier Frankenstein monster. He is a creeper. Like, he's funny, but he's a creeper. Girl who, her name's Terry. I was going to call her Short Shorts, but I actually did my research this time, found out their names. The characters all around, just, side note, characters all around in this movie were a little bit more memorable than the first one. I know their names. Alice is the only name I know from the first one, besides Pamela Voorhees. I can't tell you Kevin Bacon's character's name. He's a guy who got killed in the throat with an arrow. Pretty Frankenstein monster. Short Shorts girl's walking Terry. The camera's just following her butt. Like it's the cameraman from the old Power Rangers TV show, I guess. Because they did a lot of crotch shots and like, right there. He just pops out, shoots her in the butt with a slingshot. And she turns around and he's just like, no words, just a creepy look. Just slingshot to the butt and... I don't know. I guess they just wanted to make him one of those over-the-top douchebags before any other horror movies had made that into a character. Sum it up, Pretty Frankenstein's creepier than most slasher bad guys. He's... creepy dude. Also, there's a Shih Tzu in it! I love little Shih Tzu, long hair, mush-faced dogs. And Terry has one, right from the beginning, knowing what kind of movie it is. Speaking of characters just being more generally likable and memorable, Jenny, the main girl in this movie, spelled like Ron Weasley's sister, is just more promising from the very beginning as a character. You know, it's like you see her and you're just like, oh, she might actually survive. This is more believable. She seems like she would just beat the crap out of a person trying to murder her. Which she does. We'll get to that in a second. She's just all around a more likable character. She's less doe-eyed puppy dog of a girl who's just lost in this horrific world that they live in. Also, she's kind of an ass, and it's really funny. Like the guy who's her, I guess he's her boyfriend in the thing. The boss of this new camp. She acts like her car's not starting, and he's like, "Oh, I'll pop it open and see what's wrong." And she turns it on, and it shoots a column of thick black smoke into his face, which is dangerous, as far as I know. He thought it was funny. She's kind of an ass. There's a campfire scene, and just great setup for Jason. Like, telling his myth, setting up what happened in the previous story, telling us, like, basically what's been happening since Jason drowned, and what's been happening in the 5 years since the first movie. Doing it as just a campfire story, perfectly woven into it, without having to put crawling text on the screen saying, "This is what happened since last time." I like it. It works. Oh, and again, there's another joke that has stood the test of time to be genuinely funny. Scott, the Frankenstein douchebag, just big caveman brow, but like long flowing 80s hair. Not long, but like. He walks up to the Terry girl and he's just like, "Want to dance?" And she goes, "No." And he goes, "How about you?" Talking to the Shih Tzu. And it was just so seamless and funny. Like, it felt organic. And it was funny. And then the next time you see him, he's dancing around with it. There's a part where I think Jenny might be a racist against white people, but she's white. Because she's playing chess with her boyfriend or whatever. And he's like, "I think I got you here, check." And she's just like, "Checkmate, white man." Walks away. What? But then they start with the classic horror movie mistakes. They split up, people go random places. There's more undressing outside. There's walking outside in their underwear to go to a car. Just, you never split up for one thing. And never go outside naked for another thing. Because that's just signing your death warrant. The nosy sheriff man, he decides to wander through the woods. He sees Jason, and he chases him, and he stumbles across Jason's little shack hideout thing that he's built for himself, it looks like. And he takes the claw part of a hammer into the back of his head. It's kind of brutal. And, don't go poking around in random shacks. Another horror movie lesson for this review. Then we get to, and of course it's the Terry girl, from this point on in movie series, the mandatory nakedness. That poor girl, she looks like Iggy Pop. She's just like bones, and like you can count the vertebrae in her spine. Way too skinny. Just malnourished 80s child, I guess. There's a guy in a wheelchair who kind of popped up out of freaking nowhere. He had almost nothing to do with the first part of the movie. And then they have him in there being hit on by the chick who will undoubtedly die. One of them. Because she goes outside in her underwear. That's one of the rules. If you do that, you're getting knifed. Also, a quick question. In this universe, on the night of Friday the 13th, does it always storm like that? It's always raining in the finale of these movies. Well, of the first two. It's been a while. I don't think there's any rain in the 7th one. Third act firmly started. The killing has... most people are dead by this point. And possibly the dog muffin. Jason's chasing after Jenny. Stuff's getting real. And I like this Jason a lot. Kinda. Like, that's one of the only negative marks on the movie. Is that this... I like me a fully ready for stuff like the Batman of serial killers, Jason. He's just prepared for everything. And really, really smart. He's like MacGyver, Batman, and Ed Gein. All mixed into one. Except he doesn't wear people suits. Which leads to the Jenny girl beats him up. She beats his ass. Like, she whacks him with various hard objects around the house. Actually knocks him out a few times. The unexperienced thing. There's a part where he's like, he goes to go after her with a pitchfork and he like stands on a stool and it breaks because I guess he's so heavy. And he's just like, herpaderp, breaks his pitchfork. And, she does one of the creepiest things I've ever seen in a movie. And she puts on his dead mom's sweater. He's like, "Oh, mother's talking to you, Jason." And she, for the final part, it's not one of the most satisfying horror movie kills of a bad guy. I mean, he doesn't die, obviously. but the way she takes him out is just machete right down in this area, like through, like enters here and gets down into here, and just they leave him. They hadn't learned to double tap by this point in horror movie history. And then they go back, and everything's all, ow, I'm injured, let's lay on this bed. Something scratching at the door. Oh no, what is it? It's the dog. Muffin lived. The Shih Tzu lived. Now for the kills. In order that they happen in the movie. Poor Alice from the first one. Little dopey looking Alice. Took an ice pick to the temple. Crazy Ralph, in another attempt to warn them of the death curse.
It's got a death curse.
Ends up getting strangled to death with barbed wire. And Jason's hanging from a tree when he does it. He's like freaking Agent 47. He just drops down. Done. The nosy sheriff, claw end of a hammer to his head. Scott, Frankenstein man, he gets his throat cut with a machete. Terry gets killed off screen. You don't really see it. She just, Mark, wheelchair guy, gets a machete firmly implanted in his face and then rolls down some stairs. People in a wheelchair apparently are completely equal in this universe. Jason will murder anything with a heartbeat, except for a dog. But I think the rolling down the stairs thing may have been a little over the top. Sandra and Jeff, the two beatniky type people, they're doing it, and Jason comes in with a freaking spear and nails them both to the floor. That's a 2-for-1 special right there. That's double points. Poor little Vicky girl who was just hitting on Mark in the wheelchair. She gets her leg sliced, and she's freaking out, and he just guts her with a kitchen knife. And then boyfriend Paul, we assume he's dead. They don't show him anymore after the end of the movie. After Jason jumps through the window to grab the girl after we see that the dog's alive. I hope the dog's still alive, because that would make me not like Jason as much in this movie. Overall grades. Story gets an A+. It's just good setup, good telling of what came before, some seamless intertwining of details that we needed to know, but we didn't need to be blared at us like an air horn. Sound design, it only gets an A for this one because the music wasn't as creepy. There's some jump scares that actually got me, but it's not as spooky music as the last one. The atmosphere, we're giving an A- because, almost the same thing with the sound design. It just wasn't as creepy. There's the impending doom a tiny bit, but it doesn't feel as hopeless as the last one. It's not as creepy. It does good for oh, these kids are gonna die, but doesn't do good oh god, I might die watching this. Watchability, it's solid A. It's gone up a notch from the first one. The 80s just seem to have, you can tell that it's in the 80s, but it's almost like it was shot now and takes place in the 80s. It's like a period piece. It has aged so amazingly. This movie has aged like wine. Tone of the movie, A+. It's a slasher movie, not too creepy, not too happy. It mixes it all perfectly in this puree of beautiful hacker slasher cinema. Overall, I'm giving it an A+. Certified classic. This movie is a must-watch. It's a must-own. Even if it means going out and buying that new Blu-ray set that's the whole series. It's worth it. Get it. Watch it however you can. It's good. One final thing before the sign-off. My cat hates the kill ma noise. He hears that and he's just like, something bad's about to happen. I don't like it. And it's hilarious. From all of us here at All of Us Productions, thank you for watching, and come back tomorrow for part 3 of both Friday the 13th and the third day of our October horror extravaganza.